refreshing.
What's up, people?
Refreshing. Let's
Let's
ease
go.
on. Yeah, let's ease on into Community Beacon. Shouts out to everybody. I would imagine that you're probably at work right now and you'll catch the replay. But if not, and you do happen to check in with us, or whenever you check in with us, always like, subscribe, share, give us a comment. I think we're very good in regards to getting back to comments and putting you on the screen and deciphering what it is you're attempting to say.
What it is.
What it is. I think our communication skills are so high level that we can decipher what most people put into the chat. So appreciate you. I'm Mike Seville. I'm your
The real estate king in business, Magwal. It's the Michael Seville man. I don't know. I probably did a horrible job at that.
The worst. You might be. There was a Steven Seagal movie, something to die or something to kill, survive. I don't know. What's one of his
Every
terrible
single
movies
movie he has die and kill in it.
Yeah.
All of them do.
And they had the absolute worst Jamaican actors or actors acting Jamaican in that. Then it was like Bad Boys 2, which was pretty terrible because they didn't know if they wanted to be Haitian or Jamaican.
Yeah.
But I definitely remember Screwface from Something to Die with Steven Seagal. And I would imagine it's how, when we act or use different accents, how people in other countries look at us and say, these dumb Americans. Well, that's yeah. So you're up there
Americans that are saying these dumb Americans.
We now have you live doing the Jamaican accent. We now have you documented Jamaican accent on this Community Beacon, August 23rd, 2024. So we appreciate it. We're in a good mood today. On the other side of the screen, we got my brother from another mother, the incomparable Mr. Joel Simmons of the Tenacity Foundation, who comes off as demure. That's like the word of the week for some reason. Everybody's using the word demure. But very knowledgeable.
Look it up right now.
I looked it up too, and I said, this is the exact opposite of how people act. However, it is the word
modest, and shy. I don't think I'm shy. I don't know about that. Okay. Go ahead, speak, man. No, don't hold your breath now. You're the one who threw it out there.
Are we rolling? The social media threw it out. I started getting people talking about demure, and I'm like, well, people don't even really talk like this. And then when I said, well, let me make sure I know what it means. And when I looked at what it meant, I said, well, this is the exact opposite of how people act on social media. However, they're using this term, which is interesting because we'll get into sounding smart within this episode. We've been talking about IQ, EQ, and AQ. And so that we were getting into our mindset series. I was thinking about in regards to becoming a man, a well-rounded man, and we're going to get into this IQ portion of it this episode. I don't know if you want to roll the footage in regards to the gathering. Are we prepared to do that?
Oh man, we are always prepared to do that.
All right, cool. Let's roll the footage for the gathering, and then we can get into this
What's going on, everybody? My name is Joel Simmons. I am the host of It Starts With Me and the co-host of the Community Beacon. So, I want to introduce you to the gathering. What is the gathering? It's a male perspective group with biblical undertones. Well, it's a place where men can share their thoughts about real life experiences without any judgment. Hey, we welcome all men to jump in this group where we share a lot of different conversations like defining masculinity, self-reflection, awareness, identity, building a strong foundation, emotional intelligence, well, a lot of stuff. Don't believe me? check out these comments right here. Either way, there's always a seat here for you.
There it is.
There
There it is, man. Oh man, I think I might have cut you off a little bit on that one.
No. I think we're about to play that for the next 100 shows. The Seinfeld intro, so on and so forth. Shouts out to the. It sounds like one of those, the '90s sitcom, that type of thing going on. So,
Gosh, man. I love
shouts
the way
out.
you just breaking that whole thing down. There it is right
I
there.
love it, but I got about 98 more episodes with this commercial on, so I'm really getting to know the commercial. Shouts out to the gathering, everybody in the gathering, guys. If you don't have a place to go, it's definitely an awesome place to go check out. People in there talking and having real live conversations. Uh, Man, you mentioned judgment in regards to it. In that commercial, there's no judgment. I like to just say that there's no judgments, but I think as men and we make observations. It becomes a judgment when I'm placing some kind of uh, and I think we discussed this last week, when I'm placing something on it, when I'm actually giving it a category or an identity, so on and so forth. But observations are made, and these observations are simply made so because sometimes we can't see these observations within ourselves. Sometimes Joel is going to say, Mike, you're tripping. You are tripping right now. And that's an observation that he's making because he's saying, Mike, there's a lot of feelings associated with how you're doing it. Maybe you're not reasoning correctly because of whatever it is you got going on. You can't see the forest through the trees. So I'm making an observation to show you that there's a forest, that you're in a forest, and you can act accordingly. So there's definitely observations within the gathering. However, there's no judgment because at the end of the day, we all have to live our truths, right? And we try to get as much what we would want. I would hope, anyways, that we want to get as many well-rounded perspectives as possible.
I
So
like
yeah, go ahead.
I like the way you said that, and when it comes down to judgment, I'm gonna tell you something. And judgment isn't like it's the worst thing in the world, right? It's when it comes from the wrong place. I think
Mm,
that's the effect.
yeah.
Or that's what affects the most people. It's when you say, "Hey, you shouldn't do that," but you're still doing it.
Mm.
Hypocritical type of judgment. It's when you say, "Hey, you shouldn't do that," but it's with disdain. It's like you're putting me down. You're high, I'm low, that type of judgment. But when a man just says, listen, bro, I got you, man. I understand. I've been through that right there, you know. And honestly, I don't want to tell you that you're doing right or wrong. Just let me tell you what happened with me when I went through the same thing. And there's a form because judgment, just in the essence of it, is the ability to make a considered decision, or come to a sensible conclusion. So
Nothing
just
wrong
by
with that.
the definition, there's nothing
Nothing wrong
wrong with
with
it at
that.
all, right?
No, mm-mm.
But that's what we're diving into IQ today,
Yeah,
and that's
we
what
jump. But this is okay. So this, because we can come off attempting to sound smart. I spoke about it before, and really, I thought about this lady prior to us coming on, and I looked her
Mm,
up. Her name is Marilyn Voss Savant. I don't know if you ever are if you remember this lady, but every Sunday, the Sunday paper back in the day when you used to get the
back
Palm
in the
Beach
day
Post,
when I was young, I'm not a
they
kid
had
anymore.
the brother gonna sing. So we had the Parade magazine that was inside of this in the Palm Beach Post, and it probably was across the nation where everybody got the Parade magazine. This was my favorite part. I've always liked to read. The Parade magazine was my thing coming up as a child. So there was a person who was on there. Her name was Marilyn Voss Savant, and it was like Ask Marilyn. Now this person was like a Guinness Book World Records for IQ. So people would send in their questions to her, and she would answer. And I just thought she was the most awesome person in the world. And from my understanding, I haven't gotten the paper in a long time, but she's still doing these things. And this is just a person with a high IQ. Now, let's talk about understanding IQ. Last week we kind of went over the definition. I'm going to put up on the screen. It says this measures cognitive abilities such as logic, reasoning, problem solving, and analytical thinking. And I'll leave it up there for a moment so everyone can catch up. And there's several different schools of thoughts when it comes to the IQ. And I'm gonna err on the latter. I'm gonna talk about the first. The first one says that a person can't really change their IQ, because IQ, if measured correctly, is going to show what you're capable of doing. So if your IQ is like a 120, then they're saying that you can't improve upon the 120. It's probably going to be the same throughout your entire life. However, 120 is not bad. The higher capability you have versus someone who has a 100 or a 105, so on and so forth. I'm going to get into, and I want to talk about, and the brother could talk about whatever he wants to talk about. I think it'll be a good discussion. Is how we actually can grow it. We
Mm.
can grow our IQ, and I'm going and I want to give reason. I want to give reasoning of how we grow these different things. How can we? And then if we can't, how can we be at the upper limits of what it is that we have? Whatever our IQ capability is, for us to be the best that it is that we can be. Because if you're here at Community Beacon and you're listening in, I would imagine that you have a growth mindset. If you don't, it would behoove you to get one.
Mhm.
Um, so you're seeing what we're saying in regards to what the IQ is. We've defined it. Um, and I also want to say this is separate from even getting a bunch of different degrees. You will find that there are a lot of people who know how to, and that's probably more emotional quotient and even adversity quotient, who are learned students who know how to obtain degrees and go to places of higher learning, but don't necessarily have a high IQ. They lack certain things. Critical thinking is one of them, and your critical thinking can be affected da, 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 by your mood, by your feelings, by your emotions. Chris Voss said, and he wrote the book "Never Split the Difference." This is Chris Voss. If you haven't had a chance to check out that book, "Never Split the Difference," I would suggest it for any and everybody. He has a saying is of the angrier you get, the dumber you become.
Mm.
So meaning that you can be the smartest person, you can be pretty intelligent, you can grasp concepts, you can understand different data. Yeah, everyone knows I tend to be a data driven person, so on and so forth. But if someone gets you angry, you may have an issue receiving things. Not only do you have a issue receiving things, but you also will cut your nose to spite your face.
Mm.
You can go from being highly intelligent and a highly reasonable person to a person who is not intelligent, who can be stubborn, who could be hard-headed. Once you become angry, you start to create a glaring bias on information given to you. I want I want I want us to understand that your emotions can lead you. Not only can your emotions lead you away from logic, reasoning, problem solving, and analytical thinking, but creating certain identities or identifying with certain things. It could be identity politics. You can be an ideologue. Ideologue. It
You
can
got it.
be, yeah. It can be, so it can be spirit for spiritual reasons, or religious biases. There can be biases, gender biases. There can be, all these different biases that we have coming out now. All these political biases can make you not necessarily want to be logic and reasonable or problem solving, analytical thinking. These are certain things that can come off, and you can say things because I'm sure we've seen some of the people who prior to listening to their work, maybe written a bunch of books, have a lot of um information, but prior to them, or experiences and or education, and then they come off saying something that might be totally out of left field, and you can say, well, how can this person who's normally logical and reasoning and problem solving and has great analytical thinking make a statement like that? Well, this comes from the biases that we develop or we experience or we identify with as we come along. So this IQ part could mean a lot, especially if you're in the higher parts of the IQ. Like if you're extreme, you're 140, 150, you're Marilyn Voss savant. Or if you're below IQ, like these things make a huge difference. But for most, the typical person, the median person, the person who's at around one, I think it's between 100 and 115, or even up to 125. Let's be honest. Like it's gonna, a lot of this is going to be influenced by your state of being. All right, brother. That was my intro.
Mm, I like it. I like it, man. You know, this IQ thing, just increasing that. I think that that's an interesting topic as far as the increasing piece.
Hmm.
Because it's a measure of what cognitive abilities, logic, reasoning, problem solving, analytical thinking. And I love how you're like tying it in with the difference between that and EQ, the emotional intelligence, with a focus on IQ for today. And it's like, okay, so what do I do,
Yeah.
especially as an individual, to begin to build on that IQ? How do I get to a place where I'm able to function inside of this world and I'm able to make ends meet and
Yeah.
even thrive? Because there's a certain amount of IQ that I believe that we need. And I'm gonna toss it back to you in just a moment. But it's like when I'm listening to what you're saying, I started to see classes of people. That's what I started to see inside of my mind. And maybe this is something that people may see out there in the YouTube world or whatnot while we're talking about this, because sometimes we feel as a people as a people. Now, this
Mm.
isn't a general statement because as a people, as a black people, it's not a general statement because I know a lot of very successful black people, right? So I can't say it as a general statement because my circle has changed to be around many more successful blacks. But there was a time when my circle was always around people that were not so successful, that was always around people that were always, just barely getting by, or at the very least thought they would never be able to make it.
Right.
That was their mindset. And so it wasn't until later on in life when I realized that poor is not really a state of being, it's a state of mind. And so
Super,
when I started
super.
to understand that poor is a state of mind, not a state of being, it means that I could not have money, but I could
Hmm.
still have a rich mindset, a
Amen.
wealthy mindset, a mindset that believes I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me, a mindset that believes that if I desire to build it and do build it, they will actually come and they will actually receive, that I can do these types of things because my mind is the caliber of how I view the world. So my IQ, how does that play a part? Well, when a man doesn't, or when a man does, I'm just going to say man, when a man doesn't have the logic, the reasoning, the problem solving capabilities, the analytical thinking, it makes it very difficult for that individual to be able to arrive at that wealth mindset, because the thing that they are poor in is the words, the knowledge. They're poor in reasoning. They're so there is a piece of learning core information that is necessary as building blocks to get to that next level. It doesn't mean you have to know every single thing,
You can't.
because EQ steps in and it does, and it provides something totally different. But as far as IQ goes, IQ, or just the knowledge harvesting, and not just harvesting, right? Because IQ, it pivots on crystallization, which is one of those things that I've had difficulty with, but I've managed to change that. So I believe my IQ probably went up. Albert Einstein said, it's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with the problems longer. My reason, my logic is just keep working at it until I get it, till
Yeah.
that change mechanism. Job said, all that's occurred and all my change and all of my troubles, I will wait until my change comes. Sometimes you just got to keep on pressing through whatever that situation is until the change comes. You know, black people at a certain point in time weren't allowed to read. But then somebody got in the house. And when they got in the house, they got a chance to read. And when they got a chance to read, they began to share it outside the house. Before you know it, people in the house and out the house were able to read. Before you know it, there was somebody that was standing up saying, I don't care what happens to me, what happens, whatever. I'm going to keep on teaching. Before you know it, it became a movement. After a while, the time came when educated black people were able to stand up and say, you know what, this is actually wrong what's going on. Let me prove it at the highest level. And a movement ended slavery. Took years, but it happened because a people rose their IQ. So what does a young person or what does a person from the age of 19 to 39 do to increase their IQ, and how and what are the benefits of it? That's my
I,
question to you.
and I think that's an awesome question, and you touched on a lot of points. What you touched on, brother, is once again it goes back to becoming a well-rounded individual. So you just keeping at it, you finding ways to overcome these challenges or adversities, whether it was back when you couldn't read initially or even to this day, once you graduate and you don't necessarily have to read, so you stop doing it. So that goes into that adversity quotient, which we jump in. But this IQ, I almost feel, to your point, I don't want people to pay a lot of attention to the numbers. So
Mhm.
even with the thought or the theory that you can't really change the number of your IQ, all you can do is make the best of it. Now, I say if we take that thought or that model and let's just use it, because I'm gonna show you how easy it makes for us to use this. If we become aware and we become aware of this, saying that it's a fact and we accept it as a fact, let's say that now we can make the adjustment to say, okay, well, cool, right? I'm not at the lowest end of the spectrum, because at that point you'll probably be it'll be a disability. You know what I mean? And if I'm at the highest end of the highest end, I kind of know it. And if I accept that part of it, even that can kind of block certain things, because you start to think of shows like Third Rock from the Sun and Young Sheldon, where they're walking around, they think that their smartness is going to overcome human nature, which is not. So
Mm,
you find Young Sheldon, who was leagues ahead. I think in the show he started college at like at 10, 11, or 12. But throughout the show, what you're seeing is him understanding people, and that comes from his experiences, and still uses his data. He still goes back to his books, but oftentimes he finds himself confounded as to, why can't I just say this? It's the fact based on data. And the person who's in front of him, who's emotionally driven, is like, because I feel this way. You know what I mean?
mm,
So that's so important for you to EQ, AQ, and understand how to maneuver in this world. So, but if we accept the fact that our IQ is only what it could be, how do to this is the question: how do I make sure that I'm always at my best? How do
mm,
I make sure that I'm reaching my highest potential? You mentioned something with the reading and also with being around people, successful people. What is exactly are they doing? And you'll notice that most successful people read. There's even a saying, leaders are readers. So just to sum it up, it's exposure.
mhm,
It's exposure to new things. That poor being a mindset versus broke is the condition. I'm broke. I got $0 in my bank account. We can actually check that metric, right? If my bank account is negative or not where I want it to be, and for whatever my standard is, this makes me broke. That's easy.
mm,
That's a metric. That poor is that mindset, meaning that I'm in this victim mentality. I'm stuck in this place. Meaning that even though my bank account, you got people who have 100,000 who make $1 million a year and have a poor mindset.
Mm.
So they're spending $1,002,000 or they're going into debt. I just saw something recently where it said the average US family will is 44% of US families are willing to go into debt to take their child to Disney World
Mm.
or to the Magic Kingdom. Right. So there's a certain mindset along with that, meaning that, oh, I don't mind paying. This is an experience and I'm not going to have it. But then you come back struggling. All right. So exposure overall, exposure is going to get us at our highest capability. Same thing you're doing. There's a stat. I can't think of it off the top of my mind, but it says that after graduating high school, the average adult reads one book, finishes one book for their lifetime.
Mm.
Then there's another stat that says that the average adult doesn't get past the first chapter. I think like 90% of people don't get past the first chapter of a book, any book. I found this to be true when I was telling everyone about Think and Grow Rich, and I went out and I bought everybody this book. This is before I knew this stat occurred, and I gave it to I was just giving it out. So say I gave it to at least 10 people, to between 10 and 15 people at the minimum. And most people don't get past the second chapter of that book, second or third chapter of that book.
Mm.
Because I'll come back and I now want to discuss it and the conversation. Oh, I just can't get past this part. So initially I thought, well, maybe there's something so shocking in this book that they just can't get past this second or third chapter. But then come to find out, after looking at the stats, the data across, of them taking this information, doing this scientific experiment or this research, it says that that's just the way it is. The average person won't get past the first book, and I'm gonna tell you what. I've noticed the people who have done it. I'm thinking of a couple people right in my mind. They've went to different parts of their career. Chris is one of them. Chris was a person. I had another cousin, Devin. He did it. They just went out and they consumed the information. It was another part was Toastmasters. You and I talk about this all the time. When I was in Toastmasters, and at one point in time I was the president of Toastmasters, I was in Toastmasters for close to 8 to 10 years. I told the world about it. You want to do Toastmasters for what it costs? 100 at the time, 150 to 200 bucks a year. You get the best bang for your buck. Meet once a week. You getting able to do speeches. More important, you get to evaluate different speeches, and you get to get around people who are doing the same thing as you. So now your ecology is changing. You're growth minded. You're stepping up. Everyone who did it leaps and bounds in their career. Everyone who didn't do it is coming back and asking me about Toastmasters. This is 10 years, how many years later, and probably still in the same place, right? Still getting the question and answer about it. So to answer your question, brother, don't get so caught up with I need to take this IQ test unless you think that you may have a learning disability or maybe you can't figure out why you're always thinking about things. Like things are just constantly you just think at a high rate and you're devouring information and data, so on and so forth. I know somebody like that, but to where you can't stop it. Because you're at opposite ends of the spectrum on this IQ. Yeah, you want to go get that checked out because now you get a chance to figure out like, okay, how can I help that? But for the majority of us who are in the middle, which that's what average is, right? Average and median is. I'm in the middle. I skew towards the middle of these numbers. How can I be the best that I can be? And it's through all these things. Exposure being I think overall is the differentiate is actually the encompasses everything. Go get exposed.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What are you?
I'm right there with you as far as exposure.
Yeah.
I think that exposure, listen, words, whether it's read, heard, someone speaking those words, or the environments that we place ourselves in, the people that we surround ourselves by, and the experiences that carry such an emotional impact that it never leaves you. All four of those things are things that are always going to increase. They're going
Yeah.
to cause an increase. They can also cause a decrease. They can definitely cause a decrease. I mean, really, if we are utilizing our time to read certain things that provide no benefit, provide no growth, then that can be a waste.
Yeah.
It can be a waste if we are around people that are not going anywhere. You mentioned ecology. They're not going anywhere. They're not making any moves to grow, to become that individual. That they can cause a decrease. If the emotional experiences that we have inside of our life are the types of ones that keep us going back to certain places, like being at the bar at 3:30 in the morning, um, not just on a Friday, but when it starts to expand out. Not that I'm not saying that it's good to be there on a Friday, but when you start to find yourself in the bar multiple days out of the week and that's your go-to place, maybe you might want to start reconsidering, you know, what you're doing, what place you're putting yourself in. And is that where you want to be to grow, to develop? Is that how you want to develop? Um, Birds of a feather generally flock together. So people that are looking for certain types of change, you can generally find them swimming at the same pond. That's where you want to be at. You want to be in the pond that of the people that you aspire to be, not necessarily like, but that's the group and the mindset that you desire to be a part of. If you want to be around smart people, then go where smart people are. And eventually you will start to absorb some of that almost as if by osmosis. And the books that they read, you will find yourself reading because it enriches the conversation between individuals. And
Mm.
as you are developing your communicative skills, as well as, this is all emotional intelligence, by the way, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but this is a phase of emotional intelligence. But you can take what we are talking about right now and you can use this as IQ. You can just learn these steps and do it, right, Mike? I
Mm.
mean, you don't have to be emotionally connected to it. You can literally just go and meet somebody in a particular place and then adopt these type of personality characteristics,
Mm.
and you will have increase. It's going to happen. It's that simple. So
It is. It is.
I want to say that some of the highest thinkers that I have met currently in my life, they tend to absorb information um, quickly and make their decisions, and they tend to not change their decisions quickly. So they process it. They process really quick, then they make that decision almost as quick. But then when it comes down time to changing that decision, there's a longer thought process. And why? Why would I change it?
That's
And
interesting.
that's what I've learned. Just now, don't get me wrong. I've also noticed that when they are presented with the information that proves that there needs to be a pivot, they make that decision quickly. They don't waste time on it. They're not going back and forth on it. But they don't simply make a decision because person A showed up and said, "Oh, you should," and then person B showed up and said, "Oh, you should," and then person no. And that's what I've found a lot of people do when they make very rash decisions
Mm.
without considering the information. It's just that high level people tend to, because of the research that they've already done, when Mike shows up and he presents something, it sends rockets off inside of my mind because I've read so many books, I've listened to so many podcasts, I've written so many things, I've studied so much stuff that when he said what it was, I instantly knew it was right because the file cabinet of my mind opened up this and that and this and that and this, and boom. I'll give you one example. I know we're going to close this tonight. Today is going to be a short episode. But last night, I went into a networking group with my new friend Adrian Ellis. Shout out to him from South Florida Black Professionals Network. If y'all want to get a part of a Black professional networking group, this is the one. There's a lot of things I could tell you about it that would benefit you. This is a great opportunity. Nonetheless, I was speaking to a lady and she asked me a question. I responded. She asked me another one. I responded. She asked me another. I responded. Eventually, we got to the point where she stated just a couple of words, a phrase, and I cut her off. As soon as she said it, I cut her off. And I told her, and then I told her husband who was standing there with her, and I said, you all just made me think about something. This morning, I mean, I went home and I processed it. And I was thinking about that. I was like, gosh, man, oh my goodness. When I got here this morning into the office and got on with my assistant, with my colleague, we began to work through this thing and we cut off everything that we were going to do today. And we immediately worked on what I had just learned last night. It was that important that there was no reason to think about anything else. The decision was made, and now I've got this projection sitting in front of me, and it gave so much clarity. But it wasn't, I mean, I want y'all to understand what I'm saying is that you have to have that knowledge inside of you already, because if you don't have it inside of you already, you have nothing at all to reference whether or not it's right. And many times people get positioned with the opportunity to do something great, but because they cannot recognize it, because they don't see it, because they can't hear it, they lose it. So do all you can, read all the books you can, do word puzzles, learn new skills, whatever you can do to exercise your IQ so that when the time comes for you to increase in other aspects of your life, you're actually ready and you
Yeah,
can make that decision quickly.
I love it. I love it. Because at the end of the day, it is about being able to make that decision or make the adjustment. And I think once again, we'll get into it when we get into adversity quotient. I think that's important. Um, I'm gonna give you all a couple of quick tips.
Let's go. I got my pen out. Give me
I,
something.
I think we want to make ourselves sound smart. So we go out and we learn a bunch of different words and phrases and we repeat them and we say them over and over again and we really don't even know why it is we're saying it, what we're saying it, but it sounded good and it sounds smart.
And we
Um,
don't even use them, these cliches.
and,
We just
and-
say them because
but
everybody else does.
you know what happens with cliches too, and we have to be careful is because these cliches are so catchy. You know that it's only going to be a cliche if it's catchy. Um, they can subconsciously become law in your mind.
Yes.
Cliches can start to make you do things without you paying attention when you adopt them. So be careful with sounding smart and sounding intelligent. People come to me and say things that are cliches all the time, and I'm like, I try to, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I'm necessarily aligned with that thought. I don't even want it to enter me, right? They're like, I don't want it to have me. One of them was like, what's the word? It is what it is. We love that. That's a cliche. It is what it is. I started changing. I said, no, it is what you make it.
Mm.
Reframe it because it is what it is. All of a sudden, it becomes that in your mind, and you're repeating it. Oh, how you doing today? I'm blessed and highly favored. Let's really break that down. I'm not saying that you aren't or you are, but let's just not make it just to come off and say it, even though you are struggling and you
Mm.
need to open up your mouth and say something. But because it rolls off the tongue, I'm blessed and highly favored. I'm like, oh, are you sure? And most people aren't going to ask you if you're sure, but I ask myself that before it comes out of my mouth. I'm like, is this what I mean? Because I mean what I say and I say what I mean. So be careful about attempting to sound smart. Let's do something that's even better than that. what is it? It's better to be thought of as a fool than to open up your mouth and remove all doubt. What does that
Mm.
mean? Listen.
Mm-hmm.
Take the time out to listen and clarify, understand. I one of it resonated me once when my mentor Jim Wolf. Jim's got a is in his 80s, and I remember we were sitting at a meeting, and this is real estate, and Jim's forgotten more things than I've learned. Right, like he's been in real estate for so long. He is the creative real estate guy. He's just thinks differently than most people. And he sat there as an 80-plus-year-old guy in real estate for longer than I've been alive. And he says, "Hey, Michael, we're just all in here pretending to know things. So you need to ask questions. That way we can figure out what it is that they're actually talking about." You know what I mean? So he's saying that people are going up here talking and giving information, but some things don't add up. Like, how did you get there? Maybe they skipped a step. Maybe that step wasn't there. Maybe it's not real. Maybe they're making this up to make it sound good. Once again, so sounding intelligent. What do you mean by that? So listen. Um, that comes with humbling yourself.
Mm.
Be humble. The brother said at the beginning of the show that you can never know everything. I know about as much information as is there out in the world. If I had to compare what I know, is probably not even my pinky.
Mm.
As much information you can get it, you can get into a point of just consuming information. You
Mm.
can get on YouTube and everybody has information. You just consuming it, nothing happens. So never think that you'll know everything. No, you know exactly what you need to know for the moment. And once you gain new information by listening and understanding and clarifying, then you can make an adjustment. Know yourself. Remember what I told you before. All these emotions, we're not saying that emotions are bad, validate them. And matter of fact, here's a quick tip. You need to validate your emotions. I don't need to validate your emotions. We'll get into emotional quotient next week, where if I want to become a better person, I will, but I don't have to. But know your emotions. Am I angry? Am I upset? Am I in love? Might not need to jump on this flight and go to Vegas and get married, right? Because I'm in love. I might, so you need to know, where am I at in this? I'm getting this butterfly feelings, because those decisions that you make based out of anger and or love can be just as negative to what you got going on or what you want to going on. So figure it out. You need to know yourself and become aware. And I had a quick thing that I said, this is a simple strategy that most of us could use across all contexts. Specifically, it definitely, when it comes to the IQ, is to become aware, accept, because IQ is most things from IQ is going to be data driven. It's about reasoning. I love my mom. My mom used to be like, my nickname was Jewy. Hey, Jewy, just reason with me for a little bit. When she said that, it meant to say, let's just take the emotions out of it and let's have this conversation, which most women can't do that, but that's a whole different episode. Most men can't do it, so it's really not gender specific, women, ladies. So you make acceptance based on the facts and the data. I don't care what nobody is telling you. Look at these are the facts and the data. Future what is it? Future performance is highly based on past performance.
Mm.
Future outcomes is highly based on past performance, meaning that most people, what they have done in the past, they will continue to do and react in that kind of way. It's easy. It really gets simple. So you become aware of it, you accept it. That's the reasoning, that's a critical thinking, that's a logical part of it. Get all the information and the new information, and then you make the adjustment. You heard the brother say the next morning, we don't need to talk about anything else. We need to implement this. We need to execute on it. And just with the same amount of weight, we don't need to execute this. We don't need to express this. This is just something that we know for the future now. Hey, if I ever come across a similar thing, I'm going to use it. But in this case, when I take everything that's going on now, when I take the content and the context of everything that's going on from now, this doesn't behoove us to move forward with this. We just drop it. We're not thinking about it. But if it does, Then you act on it, which is a whole other A. But I didn't want to get into too much of the action. But you definitely are at some point going to want to implement it. But the most, because I can almost hear a lot of people saying, "Well, I don't," and I say it too. Used to say it too. I'm sure at one point in time, I don't know if I want to be around these people. They talk like this. They just so smart. They're using all these words, these big words. They got a bunch of syllables on it. And sometimes people just at the same time are just acting smart. I've heard a bunch of politicians say a bunch of stuff and it amounted to nothing because we got to take the context of the time that we're in order for in the time and place that we are now in order to get the context of everything that we're in. I'm joking, y'all. But a, a whole lot of nothing. But I love y'all, man. Let's get to it. I think I love this episode, man. I love this episode. I love interacting on this level. Um and in order for us to become more well-rounded with what it is that we have going on.
Yeah, I love it. A scripture, Proverbs 1:5. A wise man will hear and will increase learning,
Come on.
and a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. So let's be about it, y'all. If you want to see the changes inside your life, you actually have to make these changes currently. There's a philosophy that I live by. It's called PAM management. When you start to think about who you want to be and what you want to be, you project that out into your world, your life. You start to speak it into reality and then take action steps on it and allow it to just manifest. IQ, every single thing is like that. When we're talking about logic and data driven, go eat the data.
Go eat it.
That's it. You want to know about it? Go eat it. When you go eat it, you will get some of it. Eat it
Mhm.
again. Get the leftovers and the leftovers until it crystallizes inside your mind. And then you get to a point where the only thing you're able to speak is what you've eaten.
Let's get it, guys. Appreciate you all. I think this was an awesome episode. I
Yeah.
love to get into it. And we will see you next week. Peace.